Since summer 2014, pro-Russian forces have occupied territory within eastern Ukraine. Newspaper accounts often describe separatists tooling about in Soviet-era rust bucket Ladas, AK-47s at the ready. They swerve the Lada over to the curb, utter a cryptic comment about the war before knocking back a shot of vodka. The specifics are a little different. AK-47, check. Vodka, check. Rust, check. And Lada. The Lada was born, like the shark, perfectly evolved. It is the highest-selling vehicle ever to be produced without a design change. The Lada Niva four-wheel drive SUV has retained its characteristic body style for 32 years. I am talking about a Soviet-era success story. The Lada is a rolling piece of history, a cultural artifact that marks its place in time. It's a humble chariot that rocks a yesteryear buzz with the vibe and feel of a pre-glass-nosed piece of hardware that's part of the legend and lore of the USSR. The Lada was a do-it-yourselfer's dream car, very easy to work on. The Soviets based it on Fiat's user-friendly 1966 Italian sedan. Owners who were handy could change the oil, tune up the engine, adjust the timing belt, and replace the alternator. Its logo was the silhouette of a Viking ship whose loops and swoops cleverly incorporated the letter L in its design. The logo badge is in the customary spot on the front grille, like where Honda places its H. Around the time muscle cars were burning rubber in the U.S., the Lada was a model of fuel efficiency. This had enormous appeal in the European market. Otto Vaz, the manufacturer of the Lada, was willing to barter in exchange for the vehicles, not just sell them for cash. New Zealand traded meat, dairy, and fertilizer exports to the Soviets for tractors, Stolichnaya vodka, and Ladas. The Coca-Cola bottling company of the UK sent crates of beverages by the trainload in exchange for the cars. Finland, Cuba, and Ecuador were among the earliest importers of the Lada. Some of these vehicles were made to withstand winters in Siberia, so they're rugged and their weld seams are thick. Fabricated of heavy-gauge steel, they can weigh in at 2 tons. Many of these venerable ones now sport distinctive halos of corrosion around the wheel wells and blotches of rust on the paint. Battle scars. Ladas did not get exported to the U.S., the Cold War being what it was. We had Detroit Iron instead, the Plymouth Roadrunner, Pontiac GTO, Chevy Corvette. Still, we were left unlauded. Because we were left unlauded, we had few ways even to know what one actually looked like. A collector of classic Ladas in Illinois estimates that there are only 15 Ladas in the entire United States. If you've never traveled outside the U.S., you've probably never seen one. We were left unlauded. In 2015, the Washington Post newspaper columnist George Will said, Russia is a third world economy with first world missiles. There is no consumer product except vodka and caviar you would ever buy from that country. They make nothing. They have a hunter-gatherer economy, which is to say, they are primitives. During the time when George Will said this, Russia was the third most important trade partner to Europe, behind the US and China. The top 5 importers of Russian goods were the Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Turkey, and China. Russia was also the second largest weapons exporter, behind the US. A newspaper columnist can say, they make nothing, but he can't make it so. Because how do you explain the Lada? At its peak, AutoVAZ had the largest vehicle manufacturing plant in Europe. This was in the Samara Oblast, a state southeast of Moscow. The plant employed 180,000 workers, and it pumped out 750,000 Ladas a year. They make nothing. And yet, the Lada is one of the most popular cars ever built. 18 million have been sold globally since 1966. Today, the French automaker Renault has partnered with AutoVAZ, and the Samara factory is still producing a full line of models. They make nothing, but they do. It can't be both things at once. There's a disconnect here. Not only were we left unlauded long ago, we're still being left. We have a 20th century relationship with a 21st century country. We're in the 21st century too, and here's the source of the disconnect. It's as if no time has passed, no world events have marched on, as if the Cold War didn't end, as if the Soviet Union never collapsed, as if some kind of vacuum of time has kept our relationship with Russia hermetically untouched. The fact is simply this: Russia plays a critically vital role in the psyche of the American public, even when it seems far from our shores, far from our concerns, far from our daily consciousness. There's Russia, the actual place, a real and tangible country which occupies physical coordinates on a map. And then there's Russia, the archetypal threat, as conceived by us in the West and nurtured in our fears. Jane and John Q. Public go about their daily business in America, and they scarcely ever think about Russia, the place. Nonetheless, Russia, the threat, exists as a nascent bogeyman lying just beneath the surface of American culture, dormant for a time, but ready to leap into lurid action when expedience summons it. Then it functions as both a handy piñata and a 21st century specter of dark alarm. Although Russia may be far from our shores, it is never very far from our fears. Far from our shores will never be far enough away for our inner Russia. When we really want to scare ourselves, Russia is the first thing we reach for. And the poor Lada, that bona fide Soviet success story, gets swept up in this too. It gets used as a prop in the stories that scare us. AK-47, check. Vodka, check. Rust, check. And Lada. Lada. A prevalent scary story is that you'll be walking along a not very well-traveled side street and a dark-colored Lada four-door sedan will come to a screeching halt way too close for comfort. 2 doors will pop open, and a couple goons will leap out, their faces covered in black balaclavas. They'll grab you by the shoulder in a say-your-prayers kind of way, stuff you into the back seat, if not into the trunk, and then speed off. If ever you return, you won't have fingerprints anymore, and maybe you'll be missing a thumb. Disappearance by Lada. That'll keep you up at night. Russia is not just a country out there. It's inside us. The Russia within is unchanging, stalled, static, stale, stymied, stuck. The Russia within can't really be anything other than what our fears require it to be. Meanwhile, Russia the place is moving on. Like the Lada.